Today's episode of Game Geeks is sponsored by DriveThruRPG.com. Hi folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode is Apocalypse, part of the Time of Judgment series for the original World of Darkness's Werewolf the Apocalypse role-playing game. This is a DriveThruRPG.com sponsored product, which means for a limited time after the airing of this episode, using the coupon below at DriveThruRPG.com, you can get this for a discount off of the standard price. This is also starting into something we're going to start doing in some of the episodes we're going to shoot of Game Geeks, which is hearkening back to some older stuff that either we're very fond of for a game mechanics reason, or it has a lot of fun memories for us, or we just think is really cool and that you need to be aware of. Now, this is for Werewolf the Apocalypse, not Werewolf the Forsaken. That's part of the new World of Darkness stuff. Sort of like old Coke, new Coke, for those of you who are old enough to remember the Coke Wars, like me. Most of the original World of Darkness line had a preset ending in mind. It was something you were fighting toward or against. In Vampire, it was Gehenna. In Mage, it was the Ascension. Now, this is for Apocalypse. The premise behind the original Werewolf was that you are Gaia's children. Your job is to protect her from the forces of the Worm, who are the bad guys, and you get to go fight them and tear them up. But you're moving toward the Apocalypse, which is the end of all things. By the time of the End of Judgment, they decided to basically pull the trigger on all of the end of the world stuff. So the vampires had their Gehenna, the mages had the Ascension, and werewolves had the Apocalypse. This wraps up most of the oft-maligned meta-plot that came along for the ride in Werewolf. I personally liked the meta-plot because it gave you a structure in which to tell stories. I don't do sandbox very well, where it's just wide open and your players can wander around and do whatever they want. This is why Kurt doesn't like Exalted very much. But the Apocalypse gave you a framework in which to tell your stories. This book itself, Apocalypse, ends those stories. It wraps up all of the previously established non-player characters. It deals with a lot of the storylines that have already begun and the things that you can do along for the ride in that story. This gives you sort of a, up until now, how to incorporate your players into that overarching story, and then it gives you several options for how to incorporate the Apocalypse and how this is the way the world ends can work for your chronicle or your story. The first of which assumes that most of the battle is going to take place in the Umbra or the spirit world, with certain manifestations bleeding over into reality, which is why our world starts going to crap while the real war is going on in the spirit world or the Umbra. The second one is another tribe of werewolves falls to the Worm, or the Weaver if you really wanted to, but falls to the bad guys. So the fall of a tribe, this has happened earlier where the White Howlers became the Black Spiral Dancers, and now it's how another one of these tribes becomes corrupted and falls to the bad guys, and how that brings on the end of the world. The Weaver Ascendant, which is sort of another part of the cosmic triad, the Weaver, the Wild, and the Worm. The Weaver decides, screw this, I'm taking over everything, and everything becomes ordered and rigid, and there's no more creativity, and everything is logical, and essentially the world dies as a result. Finally, and probably one of my favorites, is Ragnarok itself. This is the end of everything comes, and it's in our world, and the werewolves sweep across, and the battle takes place. All of these suppose that this is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a roar. This is the great opportunity for your characters in your chronicle or your people to take a very active role in the end of the world. Some people don't like this because what it presupposes is that, well, we know the end of the world is coming, we're going to die, why should we bother? Well, you know you're going to die, but you don't know how. How awesome, and I mean that literally, awe-inspiring can your death be? How many bad guys can you take out with you in the fall? The more I get into this hobby, ladies and gentlemen, the more I realize that the ends of the story are just as important as the beginnings and the middle. How many of us have started games that had a great beginning, the middle's okay, but by the end it just petered off and nothing really happened and the game died? I've had a lot of those. I now have an end in mind for most of my stories when I start them, at least the end of one arc. This supposes that the end of the world is there, and it's not, are you going to survive? Because chances are no. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could work that in. But the point of this is, what do you do when the last battle is upon you? When you know you're going to go down. At the end of the last battleground scenario, there is a great, fantastic battle cry or battle speech, right up there with King Theoden's from Lord of the Rings about how this is going to end. It's wonderful. I don't have it in front of me to read to you, so I'm going to assume that you can read it yourself when you get it. It alone is worth the price of admission, in my opinion. Just to have that on call for when you need to use it, and have your enemies fear and always look over their shoulder and always look into the shadows for fear of your return one day. If this interests you, if for no other reason than you want to see a great way to end your chronicle and mine it for ideas, which is what I'm going to do, this product is available to you for a limited time after the initial airing of this episode with a coupon code seen below. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.
We average 9 new titles a day. That's over 60 a week. And we've got well over 15,000 RPG titles online right now. Drive-Thru RPG, the one true source for RPGs.